The breakfast plates shattered first. Then came the screaming. 3 voices, perfectly synchronized in chaos. Maple syrup dripped down Italian marble walls. A crystal pitcher sailed past the kitchen doorway, exploding against the hallway floor in a rain of glass and orange juice. Grayson Hale didn't flinch. He'd stopped flinching 3 nannies ago. "Mr. Hale, I won't." The woman in the crisp uniform backed toward the service entrance, her hands trembling. Cereal crunched under her designer flats. "They're dangerous. This isn't childcare, I quit." She didn't wait for a response. Grayson signed the resignation letter without looking up, his fountain pen scratching across the 7th form this month. The ink was still wet when he spoke to the empty kitchen. If even professionals can't last one morning, maybe they don't need anyone at all. Silence answered him, the kind that lived in houses too big for the people inside them. Then the doorbell chimed, soft, uncertain, completely out of place. Liam, the butler, appeared in the doorway. His expression carried something Grayson hadn't seen in months. Genuine concern that wasn't quite pity. "Sir, there's a young woman at the door. She says she's here about the temporary nanny position." Grayson's jaw tightened. "Tell her we're no longer hiring." "She's holding a medical invoice, sir, and she says she'll wait as long as it takes." Through the security monitor, Grayson saw her. A black woman in her late 20s, wearing a cardigan with a frayed collar and shoes that had clearly walked many miles. She held a manila folder against her chest like armor. Her posture was straight despite everything about her circumstances that should have bent it. Something in her composure made him pause. 5 minutes, he muttered. "Then call security." But when she stepped into the marble foyer, when she looked past the chandelier and the oil paintings and saw the 3 small faces peering down from the staircase landing, her expression didn't change to fear. It softened to recognition. She's seen this before, Amara Lewis thought, cataloging the children's defensive postures, their 2 bright eyes. Not mischief. Terror dressed as rebellion. "I'm Amara," she said quietly, directing her words to the children, not the billionaire. "And I'm not here to change you." 6-year-old Ava's hand tightened on the banister. "Then why are you here?" Grayson's voice cut through the foyer, sharp as the glass still scattered in the kitchen. Amara turned to face him. The morning light through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught the determination in her dark eyes. "Because no child wakes up wanting to hurt people," she said simply. "They just need someone who believes that first." Grayson stared at her, at the modest clothing, the determined eyes, the complete absence of fear in her face. "You have 3 days," he heard himself say. "Prove it can work." The Hale mansion wasn't a home. It was a monument to what grief looked like with money. Amara walked through hallways where her footsteps echoed too loud, past rooms filled with furniture no one used, under artwork no one noticed. The children's wing occupied the entire 3rd floor. 6,000 square feet of space designed by architects who'd never met a hurting child. The playroom was worse. Educational toys lined custom shelving, sorted by developmental category and age appropriateness. Everything was pristine. Nothing was played with. "They have specialists," Mrs. Eleanor Hale announced from the doorway, her pearls catching the recessed lighting. Grayson's mother had the bearing of inherited wealth and the warmth of financial statements. Child psychologists, board-certified behavioral experts, none of them have succeeded. Amara ran her fingers along a shelf of untouched building blocks. "Maybe they don't need more people telling them what's broken." "And what would you know about it?" Eleanor's tone could have frosted glass. "Your resume lists a kindergarten teaching certificate and foster care experience, hardly qualifications for children with complex trauma profiles." She's not wrong, Amara thought, feeling the weight of every door that had closed in her face, every interview that ended when they saw her zip code. But she's not right either. "I know what it feels like," Amara said quietly, "to be treated like a problem that needs solving instead of a person who needs listening to." Eleanor's expression didn't shift. "We don't do experiments here, Miss Lewis. These children are not your redemption project." "No, ma'am." Amara met her eyes steadily. "But maybe I'm not here to fix anyone, just to listen while they find their own way through." The silence stretched thin. 3 days, Eleanor repeated her son's timeline. "Then I'm personally ensuring you return to wherever you came from." After she left, Amara sank onto the window seat overlooking the estate's manicured grounds. Through the glass, she could see the city skyline in the distance, miles of concrete and ambition that had rejected her more times than she could count. Her phone buzzed. A text from the medical center. Second notice. Payment overdue. Her grandmother's face flashed through her mind. Weathered hands that had raised her, gentle voice that had never called her a burden even when every system said she was. 3 days, she thought. Make every moment count. A soft sound pulled her attention back. 3 pairs of eyes watched from the doorway. Identical faces, but each wearing worry differently. Aiden's jaw was set, protective. Asher's gaze darted, calculating routes away. Ava's hand gripped her brother's shirt. Amara didn't stand, didn't smile too bright, just sat there in the fading afternoon light and let them observe her. "I'm not here to make you talk," she said softly, "or behave, or pretend everything's fine when it's not." Aiden's shoulders tensed. "Then what are you here for?" Amara considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. To listen when you're ready. To stay, even when it's hard. To believe you're worth more than how scared you feel. "You don't know us." Asher's voice was sharper than a 6-year-old's should be. "You're right. I don't." Amara's voice remained steady. "But I know what it's like to lose someone and have everyone expect you to just move forward. Like sorrow has a deadline." Ava's eyes widened slightly. "Mama's plane crashed." "I know, sweetheart. Everyone says we should be past it." Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's been a whole year." Amara's chest tightened. "A year is nothing, and anyone who says otherwise hasn't loved deeply enough to understand." For the first time, Aiden's defensive posture softened. Just slightly. Just enough. "Dinner's in 30 minutes, Amara said, staying in her spot. "You don't have to come if you're not ready, but I'll be there, and tomorrow morning I'll still be here." She watched them process this. The absence of threats, demands, ultimatums. The radical notion that their presence was invitation, not requirement. They disappeared as quietly as they'd arrived. Amara exhaled slowly, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. She'd made it through day 1, hour 1. The medical invoice burned in her pocket like a ticking clock. 3 days, she reminded herself. That's all the chance you have. Through the window, the sun dipped below the city's edge, painting the sky in shades of amber and ash. If this story is touching your heart, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more warmth ahead. Day 2 began with art supplies, not the expensive kind from the playroom. Amara had stopped at a dollar store on her way in, spending money she couldn't spare on construction paper, crayons, and washable markers. She spread them across the kitchen table, where morning light pooled warm and welcoming. "I'm not good at drawing," Asher announced from the doorway, suspicious. "Perfect," Amara said, not looking up from her own paper. "Neither am I." One by one, they drifted in. Cautious, curious despite themselves. "What are we drawing?" Ava climbed into a chair, her feet swinging above the floor. Amara kept her voice light, casual. "Whatever worries you. Not to make it disappear, just to put it somewhere outside your head for a while." The room went still. "That's stupid," Aiden said, but he sat down anyway. For 20 minutes, the only sounds were crayons scratching paper and the soft tick of the kitchen clock. Amara drew her foster mother's back, walking away. The image that had lived behind her eyes for 20 years. Asher drew their house, but all the windows were dark. Aiden drew a plane, broken into pieces, falling. Ava drew a woman with wings, but the wings were torn, scattered across the page like autumn leaves. "Mama used to smell like vanilla," Ava whispered, tracing one of the broken wings. "Now I can't remember her voice." Amara's throat tightened. "Sometimes our brains protect us by making the painful parts fuzzy. It doesn't mean you loved her less." "Dad says we're not supposed to talk about her." Asher's crayon pressed so hard the paper tore. "Maybe," Amara said carefully. "Your dad is scared too, and sometimes grown-ups are really bad at knowing what to do with scared." The kitchen door swung open. Grayson stood in the threshold, still in his running clothes, sweat darkening his shirt collar. His eyes landed on the drawings spread across the table, bright crayons revealing dark memories. His face went rigid. "What is this?" The children froze. "Art expression," Amara said calmly, though her heart hammered. "A safe way to— You're opening wounds." His voice was ice over anger. "I hired you to help, not to tear apart the progress that took a year to build." "They weren't healed, mister. Hail." Amara stood, placing herself between him and the children. "They were suppressed. There's a difference." "You've been here one day." He moved closer, his presence filling the kitchen. "And you think you understand better than the specialists who've worked with them? The professionals I've paid—" "I think," Amara interrupted softly, "that sometimes the costly answers miss what the simple ones see clearly." Grayson's jaw clenched. Behind him, Liam appeared in the doorway, reading the tension. "Sir," the butler said quietly, "perhaps we should discuss this." 3 days was overly generous. Grayson's voice cut through everything. "You have until tomorrow morning to—" "Please." Ava's small voice shattered the standoff. "Don't make her leave." Grayson looked at his daughter, really looked, maybe for the first time in months. Her eyes were wet, but her chin was lifted. Brave. "Please, Daddy. She's not mean to us." The words landed like a revelation. How low is the standard, Amara thought, when not mean feels extraordinary? Grayson's expression flickered, something between fury and breaking. He stared at Amara, this woman with modest clothes and impossible gentleness, who'd walked into his fortress and challenged every wall he'd spent a year constructing. 72 hours, he said finally, his voice rough. "But if I see one more activity like this—" "Understood." He left without another word, his footsteps sharp against marble. Amara exhaled slowly. Her hands didn't shake until the children couldn't see them. That night, after the triplets were supposedly asleep, the security system captured something unexpected. Amara sitting on the floor outside their rooms, singing Amazing Grace in a voice that carried both strength and gentleness. One by one, 3 small bodies appeared in doorways. Then, like pieces finding their places, they settled around her. Aiden's head against her shoulder, Ava's hand in hers, Asher's back pressed against her knee. She sang all 4 verses. They fell asleep there, on the floor, in a circle of trust so delicate it hurt to witness. In his office 3 floors below, Grayson watched the security feed on his laptop. His hand hovered over the keyboard, ready to intervene. But the scene was so peaceful, so genuine, so utterly different from every clinical intervention he'd arranged. He closed the laptop, and for the first time in a year, he wondered if he'd been trying to solve the wrong problem entirely. Victoria Sloane arrived at the Hale estate like weather, inevitable and cold. She swept through the front door in Chanel and confidence, her heels clicking a rhythm that made staff straighten their postures. As Grayson's media consultant and old family friend, Victoria had orchestrated his public image through the darkest year of his life. The grieving but composed widower, the dedicated but struggling father, the tech billionaire with a heart narrative that kept investors confident and tabloids sympathetic. And now, apparently, that narrative had a problem named Amara. "You hired a what?" Victoria's voice carried through Grayson's office like a prosecution. "A kindergarten teacher with no credentials?" Grayson didn't look up from his computer. "She has a child psychology certificate and foster care experience. From a community college." Victoria dropped a folder on his desk. "I did my research, Gray. Amara Lewis, 29, grew up in state care, works at an underfunded public school, grandmother hospitalized with stage 4 cancer. And she's desperate." Victoria leaned against his desk, her expression softening into something that might pass for concern. "Which makes her dangerous. Desperate people take risks. They cut corners. They fake credentials to get jobs they're not qualified for." Grayson finally looked up. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you facts." She pulled out her phone, scrolling. "This certificate she claims to have? I called the issuing institution. They have no record of her completion." Something cold settled in Grayson's stomach. "That's impossible." "Is it? Or did you just want it to be?" Victoria's voice gentled, edging into intimacy. "Gray, I know how much you want this to work, but your children need real help, not some woman playing savior to pay her grandmother's medical bills. The children are responding to her." Even as he said it, doubt crept in. For the first time in months, Stockholm Syndrome in children is a documented phenomenon. Victoria sat in the chair across from him, crossing her legs. "They attach to anyone who shows them basic kindness after trauma. It doesn't mean she's qualified. It means they're vulnerable." Grayson's hands tightened on his desk edge. "I'll handle this quietly," Victoria continued. "No scandal, no press. I'll have HR draft a termination letter citing falsified credentials. We'll pay her severance, generous, of course. You can tell the children she had a family emergency. They'll recover." "Will they?" The question came out sharper than intended. Victoria's expression flickered. "They will if you actually hire someone competent this time. Someone vetted. Someone who won't exploit your family's situation for enough." Grayson stood, pacing to the window. The estate spread below him, perfectly landscaped and utterly hollow. "I'll review the documentation. If there's an issue, I'll address it. But I'm not making decisions based on speculation." "It's not speculation when I have the registrar on record saying, 'I said I'll review it.'" His tone left no room for argument. Victoria gathered her folder, her smile tight. "Of course. Just be careful, Gray. Your children have been through enough. They don't need another loss because you wanted to believe in a fairy tale." After she left, Grayson stood at the window for a long time. Below, he could see Amara in the garden with the triplets, all 4 of them building something with sticks and leaves. Their laughter drifted up. Faint but real. He pulled up the background check on his computer. Clean. But if the certificate was fraudulent? His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "We need to talk about the nanny." Victoria shared some concerns. Grayson closed his eyes. That evening, as Amara prepared to leave for the night, Liam stopped her in the service hallway. "Miss Lewis." His voice was low, urgent. You should know there are questions being raised about your qualifications. Amara's stomach dropped. Questions? Ms. Sloan has been making calls to the certification board, to your former employers. Liam glanced over his shoulder. I don't know what she found, but Mr. Hale is reviewing your file. The hospital bill. The 3 days. The children finally sleeping through the night. Of course, Amara thought bitterly. Of course, this was too good to be true. Thank you for telling me, she managed. She drove home in silence, her grandmother's voice echoing in her head. The world will test your kindness, baby girl. Don't let it win. The next morning, Amara arrived expecting termination papers. Instead, she found chaos. Mrs. Hale stood in the foyer with her son, both their faces set in matching expressions of cold determination. Miss Lewis. Eleanor's voice could have cut steel. We need to discuss your fraudulent credentials before you have any further contact with the children. Amara's heart hammered. I don't understand. My certificate is non-existent, according to the registrar's office. Grayson stepped forward, and the betrayal in his eyes was worse than Eleanor's contempt. You lied to get this position. I didn't lie. Amara's voice shook. I completed that program. I have the certificate at home. I can show you. Ms. Sloan already verified. Ms. Sloan is wrong. Amara's voice rose despite herself. I don't know what she told you, but I earned that certificate. I worked night shifts at a group home for 2 years while studying. I earned it. Then why would the registrar have no record? Eleanor demanded. Amara's mind raced. The program had been grant-funded, small, designed for workers who couldn't afford traditional education. The director had died last year. The office had closed, records transferred. Oh, God. The program moved to a new institution, she said quickly. When Director Morrison passed, the records were supposed to be transferred, but convenient. Eleanor's tone dripped skepticism. It's the truth. Truth is provable, Miss Lewis. Grayson's voice was level, empty. And right now, I have my media consultant's documented phone call versus your story. Amara felt the walls closing in, the same walls that had closed her entire life. Wrong address, wrong background, wrong skin color in the right zip code. The children are finally healing, she said, desperation creeping in. Ava spoke about her mother yesterday. Actually spoke, not shut down. Doesn't that matter? What matters, Eleanor said coldly, is that we cannot have a liar caring for traumatized children. You're terminated effective immediately. Mom. Grayson's voice carried a warning, but before anyone could speak further, a sound froze them all. Small footsteps on the stairs. Then Ava's voice, crystal clear and completely calm. Miss Amara sings the same song Mama used to sing. 3 faces appeared on the landing. 3 children who'd learned to move silently, to listen at doors, to protect themselves by knowing what the adults didn't say. What? Grayson's voice cracked. Ava descended the stairs slowly, her hand trailing the banister. Amazing Grace. Mama sang it every night, the same way, with the harmony part at the end. Asher nodded. We didn't tell Miss Amara. She just knew it. The air in the foyer went thin. Grayson stared at Amara. This woman who'd walked into his house 3 days ago and somehow carried his dead wife's song in her voice. How? He whispered. Amara's eyes filled. It's the only song my grandmother taught me before I went into foster care. She said it was for when I felt alone. The silence stretched into something sacred and broken. She's not lying about the certificate, Dad. Aiden's voice was steady, older than 6. She's not lying about any of it. Eleanor opened her mouth, but for once, no words came. Grayson looked at his children. Really looked at them. Their posture was different, open, Their eyes were clear instead of glazed with defense mechanisms. 3 days. 3 impossible days that had changed something fundamental. "Everyone out," he said quietly. "I need to make a call." The fundraising gala was Victoria's domain. She'd organized it 6 months ago, a charity event for children's trauma research, perfectly positioned to rebuild Grayson Hale's public image. Tech billionaire dedicates fortune to helping kids like his own. The press loved it. The investors loved it. The narrative was clean, inspirational, perfectly controllable. And then Amara Lewis became a problem. Victoria stood near the champagne fountain, her emerald dress catching the ballroom's crystal light. Around her, Seattle's elite networked in designer gowns and calculated kindness. Grayson moved through the crowd with practiced ease, smiling at donors, shaking hands, playing his part. But Victoria had seen the footage. That morning, Liam had left his security terminal unlocked. A mistake, surely, nothing intentional. And Victoria had seen what Grayson had been watching on repeat. Amara singing to the children, the triplets sleeping at her feet, the absolute trust in their faces. It was a threat to everything Victoria had built, not the professional narrative, the personal one. She'd known Grayson for 15 years, been there through his marriage, his grief, his collapse. She'd held space for him when his wife's plane went down, orchestrated his public recovery, positioned herself as the constant in his chaos. And eventually, when enough time had passed, when the wound had scarred over, she'd planned to offer him something new, something clean, a fresh start with someone who understood his world. But this woman with her worn shoes and dangerous kindness was unraveling years of careful positioning. Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling to a number she'd kept for emergencies. Time to remove the problem permanently. Across the ballroom, Amara stood near the terrace doors, completely out of place. She'd borrowed a dress from the estate's guest wardrobe. Simple navy blue, probably 3 seasons out of style. Grayson had insisted she attend. Something about the children asking why their favorite person wasn't there. She felt like an imposter at a wedding where she didn't know the bride. "You look uncomfortable." Amara turned. A woman in emerald green extended a champagne flute, her smile warm, but her eyes calculating. "I'm Victoria, Gray's media consultant." She clinked her glass against the one Amara hadn't accepted. "And you must be the woman everyone's whispering about." "I'm just the nanny," Amara said carefully. "Just?" Victoria's laugh was light, musical. "From what I hear, you're performing miracles. 3 days and the children are transformed. Quite the Cinderella story." Something in her tone raised every instinct Amara had learned in foster care. The sweet voice hiding sharp intent. "I'm helping where I can." "Of course." Victoria sipped her champagne. "Though I have to ask, purely professional curiosity, did you always specialize in trauma care? Or is this a new direction?" "I work with all kinds of children." "Yes, at that public kindergarten. Oakwood Elementary, right?" Victoria's smile never wavered. "I drove past it once. Such a dedicated environment? Must be hard, caring so much with so few resources." Amara's jaw tightened. "The kids there are amazing." "I'm sure, just like the children here." Victoria's voice dropped, confidential. "Which is why I worry sometimes about, let's call it, scope of practice. Trauma therapy is so specialized. One wrong approach and you can do more harm than good." "Are you saying I'm harming them?" "Oh no, I'm saying you're wonderful with them." Victoria's hand touched Amara's arm, gentle. "But wonderful isn't the same as qualified. And in a family like this, with resources, with scrutiny, there's always risk when someone steps outside their expertise." Before Amara could respond, a commotion erupted near the terrace. Staff rushed toward the outdoor area. Grayson's face went white as he pushed through the crowd. And then Amara heard it. Ava's scream. She ran. Outside, on the stone terrace overlooking the gardens, chaos. Ava sat on the ground, her dress torn, blood streaming from her knee. Asher and Aiden stood frozen in identical shock. Security surrounded them. What happened? Grayson dropped to his knees beside his daughter. She fell. Victoria appeared, breathless, her face painted with concern. I was just checking on them. They said they wanted to see the garden lights, and she tripped on the stairs. But Ava's eyes found Amara's. She pushed me, the little girl whispered. The terrace went silent. What? Victoria's voice cracked with perfect disbelief. Sweetie, no, you fell. I tried to catch you. You pushed me. Ava's voice grew stronger. You said Miss Amara was going away and we'd forget her like we forgot Mama. Then you pushed. Grayson stood slowly. His eyes moved between his daughter and Victoria. That's a serious accusation. Gray, she's confused. She hit her head. Victoria reached for his arm. He stepped back. Did you push my daughter? Of course not. I would never. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed. She fell, and now she's frightened and confused, and she's blaming me because I'm not the person she's attached to. This is exactly what I warned you about. Inappropriate bonding, distorted perceptions. Liam. Grayson's voice cut through Victoria's explanation. Pull the terrace security footage. Now. Victoria's face flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough. The cameras out here were disabled for the event, she said quickly. For guest privacy. No, they weren't. Liam appeared from the doorway, tablet in hand. I specifically maintained full coverage tonight per Mr. Hale's standing security protocols. He turned the screen toward Grayson. The footage was damning. Clear. Undeniable. Victoria leaning close to the children, her mouth moving. Ava backing away, her small face crumpling. Victoria's hand on the child's shoulder, gentle from one angle, but the reverse view showed the push. Calculated. Deliberate. The tablet shook in Grayson's hands. You hurt my daughter. His voice was barely above a whisper, which somehow made it more terrifying than a shout. You deliberately hurt a 6-year-old child. Gray, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. He looked at her like she was a stranger, like she'd always been one. You're done. Not just tonight. Your contract is terminated. Your firm will never work with Hale Technologies again, and if you come within 100 feet of my children, I will press every charge available. Victoria's mask cracked completely. You're choosing her? The word dripped contempt, aimed at Amara. A nobody with a fake certificate and a dying grandmother? She's using you, Gray, using your grief, your guilt, your desperate need to fix your broken children. My children aren't broken. Grayson's voice was steel. They never were. They were grieving, and everyone, including me, tried to fix something that just needed time and kindness. He turned to Liam. Escort Ms. Sloan to her car. If she resists, call the police. As security led Victoria away, her composure shattered into something ugly. She turned back, venom replacing performance. You'll regret this. That woman will destroy everything you've built. Your reputation, your family, your precious, perfect image. I don't give a damn about my image. Grayson's voice carried across the terrace, loud enough for the gala guests now crowding the doorway, loud enough for the society reporters with their phones raised. If being kind means breaking every rule of what Seattle society expects, then watch me burn every bridge I have to. The crowd murmured. Shock, approval, phones recording everything. Grayson didn't care. He knelt beside Ava again, gathering her into his arms. His hands shook as he brushed hair from her face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't see. I'm so sorry I let someone hurt you because I was too afraid to trust the right person." Ava wrapped her small arms around his neck. "It's okay, Daddy. Miss Amara says everybody gets scared sometimes." Over his daughter's shoulder, Grayson's eyes found Amara's. The gratitude there was crushing, the apology unspoken but clear. "I almost threw you away," his expression said. "I almost chose the wrong story again." Amara nodded slowly. Understanding. Forgiving without needing the words. Because that's what kindness did. It kept showing up even when the world said quit. The morning after the gala, Grayson found Amara in the garden. She sat on the stone bench near the rose beds, watching early light paint the lawn gold. Her borrowed dress had been returned to the guest wardrobe, replaced by her own clothes. Practical, worn, real. "I owe you an apology." He stood a careful distance away, giving her space. "A real one, not the corporate kind I'm good at." Amara looked up. "You already apologized last night." That was the emergency apology, the crisis management version. He moved closer, still not sitting. "This is the actual one, where I admit I was so terrified of hoping again that I sabotaged the first good thing to happen in my house in a year." A breeze moved through the roses, carrying the scent of early blooms. "You were protecting your children," Amara said quietly. "That's not something to apologize for." "I almost threw you out based on a lie." Grayson's voice cracked. "I trusted Victoria's word over my own children's healing, over what I could see with my own eyes. Because she fit the world I understood, and you—" He exhaled slowly. "You didn't." Amara studied him. This man who commanded boardrooms and tech empires but couldn't figure out how to hold his own grief. Who'd built walls so high around his children that kindness looked like a threat. "You can't fix healing with money," she said gently, "or control it with rules. It happens at its own pace, on its own terms. All you can do is make space for it." Grayson finally sat, maintaining the respectful distance. "I've been doing everything wrong, haven't I?" "Not wrong, just scared." Amara's voice carried understanding, not judgment. "You lost your wife, your children lost their mother, and everyone kept telling you there was a right way to handle it, a timeline to follow, experts to hire. But grief doesn't read instruction manuals." She sang that song to them every night. The confession came quiet, raw. "Sarah, my wife. Amazing Grace was her grandmother's song passed down. When I heard you singing it, I thought—" He stopped, composing himself. "I thought maybe grief was making me see patterns that weren't there." "Or maybe," Amara said softly, "some songs are meant to find the people who need them." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the garden wake up. Somewhere in the house, the children were sleeping in. Actually sleeping, not lying awake with night terrors. "I need to ask you something." Grayson turned to face her. "And I need you to answer honestly, not what you think I want to hear." Amara nodded. "The children are healing because of you. Real, visible healing. But I don't want them to become dependent on you in a way that—" He struggled for words. "I don't want to create a situation where you leaving becomes another loss they can't handle. So I need to know. What happens next? What's the healthy boundary here?" It was the question Amara had been dreading, because the answer was complicated by the hospital bills, by her grandmother's declining health, by the fact that 3 days had become something she couldn't bear to walk away from. "The healthy boundary," she said carefully, "is letting them heal at their pace, not yours or mine. That means not rushing them to be okay just because it's been enough time by adult standards. But it also means teaching them that love doesn't disappear when people leave a room." "Permanence," Grayson said, understanding. "Consistency." Amara met his eyes. They need to know that the people who show up will keep showing up. Not forever. That's an impossible promise, but for as long as they're needed, in whatever form that takes. Can you do that? The question was vulnerable, exposing. I know you have your grandmother, your teaching job. I'm not asking you to give up your life. I'm asking if there's a way to make this sustainable for all of you. Amara felt the weight of the choice. The kindergarten where she'd worked for 5 years. The kids who needed her there. The grandmother who'd raised her, now fading in a hospital bed she couldn't afford. I don't know, she admitted. I want to say yes, but I can't make promises I'm not sure I can keep. Grayson nodded slowly. Then let me make this easier. Your grandmother's medical bills, I'd like to cover them. Amara stiffened. No. It's not charity. It is. Her voice was firm, but not angry, and I can't accept it. Not like this. Why not? Because the minute I let you solve my problems with your money, I stop being someone who's here because it's right and become someone who's here because she owes you. Amara stood, needing the distance. That's not healthy for me, and it's definitely not healthy for your children. Grayson absorbed this, recalibrating. What if it's not charity? What if it's part of a formal employment contract? Full-time position, competitive salary, full benefits including family healthcare coverage? I'm not qualified to be a full-time nanny. You're not a nanny. He stood too, closing the distance slightly. You're a child development specialist. That's what I'll call the position. What you'll be, not fixing my children, helping them grow through their grief while maintaining their dignity. Amara wanted to say no. Every instinct told her that accepting would complicate everything. The boundaries, the dynamic, the story she told herself about why she was here. But her grandmother's face flashed through her mind. The unpaid bills, the children sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. If I say yes, she said slowly, there are conditions. Name them. I'm not living. I need my own space, my own life outside this house. She held up a finger. I'm not their mother and I won't pretend to be. I'm support, not replacement. Agreed. If they start depending on me in unhealthy ways, we adjust. Their long-term well-being matters more than my job security. Of course. And you? She paused, measuring her words. You need to do your own healing work. Not for me. For them. Because kids can sense when adults are pretending to be okay, and it makes them think they have to pretend too. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I'll call my therapist today. Good. Amara extended her hand. Then we have a deal. He took her hand, warm, steady, respectful. Not the grip of an employer, but of an ally. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on us when you had every reason to. Thank you for not letting fear win. They released hands, but the connection remained, an understanding that this was bigger than either of them. This was about 3 children who deserved to believe the world could be kind again. As Amara turned to leave, Grayson's voice stopped her. The surveillance room, the one where I've been monitoring everything, I'm dismantling it today. She turned back. Why tell me? Because it was a symbol of control, of not trusting anyone, including myself. He looked toward the house, where his children slept. And if I'm asking them to trust again, I need to show them what that looks like. Amara smiled, small, genuine, warm. That's the most inspirational thing I've heard all week. He laughed, surprised. Inspirational? Letting go always is. 3 months later, the kitchen table became a sacred space. Sunday mornings meant cookies. It had started as a simple activity, teaching the triplets to measure flour, crack eggs, follow instructions, but it had evolved into something deeper. A ritual of normalcy in a house that had forgotten what normal felt like. Amara stood at the counter, her hands dusted with flour, watching Ava carefully roll out dough. Asher argued with Aiden about whether chocolate chips or butterscotch was superior. Morning light flooded through the windows, warming everything it touched. Grayson leaned against the doorframe, just watching. He'd learned to do that, to be present without controlling. His therapist called it mindful observation. His children called it Dad actually being there. "Miss Amara?" Ava's voice was thoughtful, not urgent. "Can I tell you something about Mama?" The kitchen went still, but not frozen. Not anymore. "Of course, sweetheart." "She used to burn cookies on purpose," Ava giggled. "Like every time. Dad said it was because she always forgot to set the timer, but Mama said burned cookies had character." Grayson's throat tightened. He hadn't heard them talk about Sarah with laughter in... He couldn't remember how long. "That sounds like she made the best of her mistakes," Amara said gently. "That's a good quality." "She was good at lots of things." Asher added chocolate chips to his dough ball. "She taught me how to whistle. It took forever and I was really bad, but she never got mad. And she could do all the voices when she read stories," Aiden chimed in. "Like different ones for every character. Sometimes she'd mess up and we'd all laugh. They spoke about their mother the way children should. With love, with laughter, with the natural mixture of missing and remembering that meant healing was happening." Grayson moved into the kitchen, drawn by the warmth. "What else do you remember?" 3 pairs of eyes looked at him, checking, cautiously, to see if it was safe to continue. If he was ready. "You won't be sad?" Ava asked. Grayson knelt beside her chair. "I'll be a little sad, but the happy kind of sad, the kind that means she was real and we loved her." "Okay." Ava thought for a moment. She always smelled like vanilla because she wore that lotion, and she sang really loud in the car, even the wrong notes. "She made up words when she couldn't remember the real ones," Asher added. "In songs. It was so funny." "And she always kissed us 3 times at bedtime," Aiden said. "Once for I love you, once for sweet dreams, and once for see you in the morning." The memory settled over the kitchen like gentle snow. "I forgot the 3 kisses," Grayson whispered. "When did I stop doing that?" "When you got scared." Ava's small hand patted his. "But it's okay. You can start again." The simplicity of children's forgiveness nearly broke him. Amara turned to the oven, giving them space. She set the timer. Not because she needed to, but because some gestures carried meaning beyond function. The soft tick, tick, tick became a heartbeat in the quiet. "Miss Amara?" Asher's voice was careful. Do you think Mama would like you?" The question hung in the air, not accusatory, genuinely curious. Amara turned back to them, considering the question with the weight it deserved. "I think she'd be grateful that someone was here to help you remember her with love, instead of just sadness. And I think she'd want you to know that healing doesn't mean forgetting. That's what Dad's therapist says too." Aiden nodded sagely. "Everybody needs therapy, even grown-ups." Grayson laughed, surprised, genuine. "Even grown-ups, especially grown-ups who thought they could just work through grief like it was a business problem." "You can't schedule healing on a calendar," Ava recited, clearly repeating something she'd heard. Then she looked at Amara. "Right?" "Exactly right." The oven timer chimed. Together, all 5 of them, they pulled out the first batch of cookies. Golden brown, imperfectly perfect, the kitchen filling with the scent of butter and sugar and something that felt like home. "They're not burned," Ava observed. "Should we burn some?" Asher asked. "For Mama?" Grayson looked at Amara, a question in his eyes. She smiled. "I think that would be a beautiful way to remember her." So they did. They deliberately left 3 cookies in too long, until the edges blackened and the kitchen filled with smoke. They opened windows, laughing, waving away the haze with dish towels. And when those 3 burned cookies sat on a special plate, Aiden said solemnly, "For character." "For character," they all repeated. It became part of the ritual after that. Every Sunday, 3 deliberately burned cookies. A small rebellion against perfection. A reminder that love survives mistakes, that memory holds both sweetness and char, that healing looks like laughter through smoke-filled kitchens. Grayson caught Amara's eye across the table. Mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." She shook her head slightly. "Not me. Us." Because that was the truth. Healing wasn't something one person did to another. It was something people did together, in kitchens full of light, with flour on their hands and grace in their hearts. Outside the window, the city sprawled in its usual chaos. But in this kitchen, in this moment, there was only warmth. Only the heartwarming certainty that broken things could be made whole, not through force or money or expertise, but through showing up. Through kindness that stayed even when it was hard. Through love that chose to keep choosing, day after day, burned cookie after burned cookie. 6 months after that first chaotic breakfast, the backyard became magic. Summer had settled over the estate like a blessing. Warm nights, fireflies dancing through the garden, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Grayson had converted a corner of the grounds into something the children had designed themselves. A memory garden where they'd planted wildflowers and hung wind chimes and created a space that was theirs. Tonight, they'd built a blanket fort on the lawn. All 5 of them, even Grayson, who'd shed his suit jacket and tie and learned to exist outside the armor of corporate perfection. Amara lay on her back, watching stars emerge through the summer haze. Ava's head rested on her shoulder. The boys sprawled nearby, pointing out constellations they'd made up entirely. "That one's a dragon-eating pizza," Asher declared. "That's not a constellation," Aiden argued. "You can't just make them up." "Why not? Old people made up all the other ones." Grayson laughed. "He's not wrong." The easy comfort of it, the casual intimacy of family formed not by blood but by choice, settled over them like the blanket beneath them. "Miss Amara?" Ava's voice was drowsy, content. "Are you going to stay forever?" The question every adult had been carefully not asking. Amara felt Grayson's attention sharpen, though he didn't move, felt the weight of 6 months of healing, of trust built minute by minute, of a life that had somehow woven itself into a shape she hadn't planned. "Forever is a long time," she said gently. "But I'm not planning on going anywhere soon. Is that okay?" "More than okay." Ava snuggled closer. "We don't scare you, do we?" The callback to that first desperate question, 6 months ago, when 3 traumatized children had expected another abandonment. "No, baby." Amara's voice held absolute certainty. "You never scared me. Not even a little bit." "Not even when we put soap in the dishwasher and flooded the kitchen?" Asher asked hopefully. "Not even then. Not even when Aiden accidentally cut his hand and there was so much blood." Ava started. "Especially not then," Amara interrupted firmly. "Because you called for help immediately and stayed calm like I taught you. I was really proud of you that day. The motivational power of being seen, of being trusted, it had transformed 3 children from wreckage into wholeness, not perfectly, not without setbacks, but undeniably, beautifully real." A firefly landed on Ava's hand. She went still, watching its light pulse. "Make a wish," Grayson said softly. Ava closed her eyes. Her lips moved silently. When the firefly lifted off, glowing into the darkness, she smiled. "What did you wish for?" Asher asked. "Can't tell. It won't come true." That's not how wishes work. How would you know? You're not the boss of wishes." Amara smiled, listening to their argument fade into the comfortable bickering of siblings who felt safe enough to be annoying. It was one of her favorite sounds. Proof that children who'd been too scared to argue, too shut down to care, had found their voices again. Grayson shifted slightly, his shoulder near hers but not touching, respecting boundaries even as the space between them had slowly, carefully begun to feel like possibility rather than professional distance. "Thank you," he said quietly, just for her. "For staying. For teaching me how to be present instead of just providing." "You're doing the work," Amara replied. "I'm just holding space." "You're doing more than that." His voice carried something deeper. Gratitude, yes, but also something that had been growing between them for months. Something neither had named, both too careful of the children's needs to rush. But it was there, in the way his eyes found hers across crowded rooms, in the way she'd started thinking of this house as home instead of the job. In the quiet moments when the children were asleep and they'd sit in the kitchen, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and hopes. The romance of it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was this, showing up, choosing each other, building trust so deep it felt like architecture. "Sing the song," Ava requested sleepily. Amara didn't need to ask which one. She sang Amazing Grace, as she had dozens of times now, the version her grandmother had taught her, the version Sarah Hale had sung to her children, the version that had somehow built a bridge between loss and healing. Her voice rose soft and clear into the summer night. By the second verse, Grayson joined her, tentative at first, then stronger. He'd started singing to his children again, relearning the lullabies he'd abandoned in grief. The triplets' breathing evened out, one by one. Sleep came easy now. No more nightmares, or at least fewer. No more thrashing awake in panic. Just the natural rest of children who knew they were safe. When the song ended, silence settled. But the good kind. The kind that felt like peace instead of emptiness. "I never thought—" Grayson's voice was barely a whisper. "After Sarah died, I thought the best I could hope for was functional. Get through each day. Keep them alive and educated and surviving. And now? Now they're living." He turned to look at her, and in the firefly-lit darkness, his expression was open in a way it hadn't been 6 months ago. "We're living, because you showed me the difference." Amara felt the sting of tears. "They did the healing. I just didn't get in the way of it. You did more than that. You showed us that kindness isn't weakness, that asking for help isn't failure, that love can be built, not just inherited." The words hung between them, honest, vulnerable, weighted with possibility. "Grayson," she started. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever, if that's not what you want. But I needed you to know that this—" He gestured to the fort, the sleeping children, the garden around them. "This is the happiest I've been in years, and it's because you were brave enough to walk through a door everyone said would close on you." Amara's chest tightened with everything she couldn't yet say, the feelings that had grown too large to ignore, but too precious to rush. The knowledge that this, all of this, was the family she'd always wanted and never thought she'd find. "One day at a time," she said softly. "That's all we can promise." "One day at a time," he agreed. "But I'm glad you're here for them." A pause. His hand moved slightly closer to hers on the blanket. Not touching. Not yet. Just present. "For all of us," he added quietly. Their fingers brushed. Barely. A question and an answer in a touch lighter than firefly wings. Above them, Stars wheeled through summer darkness. Around them, jasmine and memory and the breathing of children who'd learned to trust again. Inside them, the cautious unfurling of hope. That careful, beautiful thing that whispered maybe. Maybe broken families could be remade. Maybe grief could coexist with joy. Maybe a woman with worn shoes and impossible kindness could find home in the last place she expected. Maybe a man who'd forgotten how to hope could remember. Ava stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "Stay, Miss Amara." "I'm right here, baby," Amara whispered, and she was. Not going anywhere. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not for all the tomorrows that stretched ahead, one day at a time, one burned cookie at a time, one firefly-lit evening at a time. The wind chimes sang their gentle song. The fireflies danced their ancient patterns. And 5 people who'd been strangers 6 months ago lay together under summer stars, held by the invisible threads of chosen family, the most powerful kind. This, Amara thought, this is what grace looks like. Not amazing because it was extraordinary, amazing because it was ordinary, because it was real, because it was earned through showing up when everything said to quit, because kindness, in the end, was the most motivational force in the universe. And love, the built kind, the chosen kind, the we'll figure it out together kind, was the only magic that mattered. The fireflies flickered, the children breathed, the man beside her exhaled years of holding too tight, and Amara closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to feel it. Home. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing what moment spoke to you most. Subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us love is always worth the healing. And if you know someone who needs to hear that kindness wins, share this with them. Sometimes we all need the reminder that broken things can become beautiful again. Until next time, may you find grace in unexpected places, and may you be brave enough to stay when love asks you to.